Okay, as you can see, I am done with Castle, and I'm going to talk to you about a few vocabulary words: color blocking, saturation, value, and cool colors. I'm going to start at the bottom because I want to describe to you what I did with the cool colors in his portrait. So I described in the last video how I was going to use cool colors to kind of make parts of him recede away. So if you think about his snout being the closest to the viewer, if he was real and in 3 dimensions, the nose would be the closest, then farther away would be the jowls, farther away would be the fur behind the jawline. So if you look really closely, you'll see that I placed some violet, which these are the 2 cool colors I used, violet and violet blue. The violet blue I used in the darker areas, and the violet I used in the lighter areas. You can really see it alongside of the jawline and in the ear. And what this does is it makes his portrait look more 3-dimensional. Plus, color is your friend. Don't ever forget that. So I love to use color in bright ways. As you can see, it really adds a different depth to the picture. So this scarf here, there's actually some violet underneath it to show a little shadow. So whenever you have something that lays on top of something else, that something else that's behind needs to have somewhat of a shadow. So that's what this light violet is here. As I go around to this area, I use the blue violet, then it goes back to violet, and then blue violet again. There's lots of blue violets in his body, and there's lots of violet here on the paw line where the paws kind of turn and go away from you, the viewer. So obviously now I'm on to working on Max, and I'm working on color blocking, which is another one of our vocabulary words. So color blocking is what I did with Castle's portrait, but I didn't call it that. I'm calling it that now. So I'm using this beige color because if you look at his portrait, he's not as dark brown and deep chocolatey brown. He's more of a really light yellowish beige color. I mean, he has some browns here on the bridge of his nose and back in here and in his ear, but mostly it's a yellowish beige. So I'm going to use that yellow beige to block out colors, or to block out where that color will be. So right here in his foot, I'm pointing to it with my finger. It's right here. You can't really see it in the video, but believe me, it's there. And so I'm using a very light value, so little pressure on the pencil, and I'm color blocking his pattern in. So wherever there is that beigeish, yellowish color, I'm going to use the beige. Wherever you see, like on his leg, he's got some black marks here. So that's this area in here. So I will take the black and I will very lightly color block it in. This is just to give a value first before we start using more layers and adding the texture of the fur. And his fur is not like Castle's. It's very, very short, and so my mark lines are going to be very short. Now let's talk about saturation. Saturation is the amount of pigment that you have on your paper, and you can tell the saturation by how intense the color is. So if we're talking about Max's sweater, you would say that the cuffs on the sleeves and around the neckline are more saturated than the sweater itself is. Another way that you can tell about the saturation would be holding it up to the light and seeing where it's shining in the light, where the wax is so built up that it's creating a smooth, shiny surface. And in this case, it would be his eyes and his nose. I did this on purpose on Castle because, oh, I'm frozen, there we go. Because I wanted your attention to be on his face and his expression. So artists use saturation to draw attention, especially in colorful scenes like this one. So the saturation of the sweater cuffs and around the neck and his eyes and his nose and his mouth area were purposefully done. I'm going to do the same thing with saturation on his body, so it'll be lighter like Castle's body and like the sweater. But on his face, his eyes, and his snout and his nose, those areas are going to be more saturated like they are on Castle, so that as a viewer of this finished piece, your eyes are going to start in this top corner, trickle down, get caught up in the eye and then the snout, and keep moving and kind of jump down to his face, and then his leg takes you right out. This is how I would walk visually, how my eyes would walk through this piece. So the composition is actually diagonal. You can, if I drew a line across it, it would go like this. And that's just one way of drawing a composition. Other ways would be using the rule of thirds and using a Z pattern or a V pattern. Anyway, I just use the diagonal. I have yet to decide what to do to the background, so maybe the next time you see me in the video about this, I will have made that decision. Have fun and color away.